All right. I believe this means we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions. Welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly and horribly named podcast series. But the QA is the important part because obviously that stands for question and answer, as we like to have a bit of an interactive conversation. All of the news that's hitting our news feeds, give ourselves some time to sort out our feels on those headlines, not just react in the moment, come back and see how those stories evolve. And then it gives us just the play. You know, we can start our week off the right way with some good, fun tech conversation. Dave Burns, oh no, the hat is blue. Juan is entering his blue period. I'm going to need the Prozac soon. I want to try and keep this show a little lighter because we do have a pretty healthy news block while the gadget block is running just a little bit leaner. So I'm going to try. We're going to see what we can do to keep this just a little more fun. But I'm seeing a great group of people already in the comments ready to have a conversation, ready to have a chat. So I'm stoked. I'm looking forward to it. I want to start this off. Just hopefully everyone out there had a lovely Valentine's Day. February 14th. Marie and I tried to make the day as special as we could for Lex. I mean, there was definitely a bit of just, I feel like shelter in place fatigue. We were trying to do something kind of fun. We took her to the Santa Barbara Zoo. The Santa Barbara Zoo has been doing these like windowed entry timeline you go at a certain time and they let you in. I don't know what that's called. And so we got to run around and just get some fresh air and see some animals. There's a new lion cub at the Santa Barbara Zoo. Pauline, the lion cub, super adorable. So I hope Lex had a good time there. But I mean, definitely some of this was kind of compounded by the fact that things have not been normal for a while. So, you know, getting into last night and just trying to manage all of this. And I think there was that energy that Marie and I were putting out there of like, we've got to make it special. We've got to make this fun. And I think that maybe kind of burned us all out. But we did have fun meal. We exchanged plenty of chocolates. There was sort of a rush on Sunday morning. Lex wanted to make special Valentines for us, and there was lots of cutting of paper and paper hearts, and so a lot of that was really fun. So again, for whatever your feelings are on the commercialization of holidays like that, I always, in my family, we're always down. You know, we don't really need much of an excuse to try and have a party or try and have a good time, and so we like to take those days and, you know, it's a moment for us to kind of remember the people that we care about and to reach out. We, you know, called my mom and we called Marie's mom and we just tried to make it a fun day. So I hope everyone out there also, you were able to do something. If it was even just like a little, you know, personal care, you know, on this Valentine's Day, I'm not going to go on Reddit and be upset by all the people who are single. I'm just going to play my favorite video game and take care of myself. Even if it's something like that, I feel like that is a worthy and wholly appropriate way to spend a holiday, a Valentine's Day holiday day. So, like Dave Burns, I played Fallout New Vegas, so I guess that was fun. Matt Tyler, me and Sam exchanged Valentine. Aww. Aussie Beach Bum coming in from Australia. We've got Heiki here again. Q3 Steve. Dank Pikmin God. I had to study for a chem test on Valentine's Day. I feel like, you know, chemistry. Studying some chemistry for Valentine's Day? That sounds A-okay in my book. Right? Sorry, that was the worst joke I could come up with in the moment. Aditya, no, as a single guy, I can assure you I am miserable all day, every day, but need one day in particular to feel like crap. Oh, Aditya. Well, I think for Valentine's Day, we can all say we care about Aditya and we hope that he has good times and that he's not perpetually depressed. Because one of the other things we did over the weekend, you know, we'll use this to kind of segue into housekeeping. On the Patreon, we had our third game night We held a Tetris tournament where I found out that Dave Burns, his girlfriend, is phenomenally good at Tetris. Gave me a great run for my money. But I wanted to try and do something a little more community, sort of, like game nights are tough because I know that there are a crew on the Patreon who are really into like Call of Duty style games, first person shooters, maybe battle royales. Then there's a whole much larger group of people on the Patreon that don't game at all. And so I want to try and find a more social activity than just like who's really good at like, twitchy first person shooters. Because I'm not very good at twitchy first person shooters anymore. So that kind of balance is kind of tricky. So I've been trying to lean more towards easier to pick up, easier to play, more accessible, and then also games that are on a variety of other platforms. So we found a version of Tetris that you could play basically anywhere. Like anything that has a functioning web browser, you can join a room where you're all in competition against each other to play some Tetris. So I think at one point we had like 12 people playing all in the same room, and it was a lot of fun. Very short rounds, very quick, very punchy, and I had a really good time. It was Saturday night, jamming on a game night. So in 2 weeks, I think we're going to do a movie night just to kind of keep that switch back and forth. And so we're going to alternate movie night, game night, movie night, game night. And I haven't fully decided on the next movie night, but we'll see if we can maybe make it some classic, like 1980s family sci-fi. Something kind of cornball and fun, and we can all have a good time. Sort of trashing it in a Discord chat room or something like that. So, let me get this out of the. Oh, Gary the Fireman, gifting a tier 1 sub to Matt Tyler. I'm way behind. So Gary the Fireman hit up JMX Warrior with the sub. Matt Tyler got Braden with the sub. Then Gary the Fireman came right back, ER1980. You guys are dueling right now, and I greatly appreciate the support on the Twitch, on the Twitch channel. That's really super cool of you. So, Dave Burns is saying we should watch the Star Wars Holiday Special next. Okay, we're not going to watch it next. It's funny that you brought that up because I really wanted to save that for a movie night during the holidays. So sometime in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, maybe for the first night of Hanukkah. Who knows? I want to do a community watch along because I mean that's something we can all fire up on YouTube, right? And it's not good. It's real bad. So that is in the works. I'm not mad that you spoiled it because by the time we get to the holidays this year, I'm pretty confident people won't remember the intro to this podcast. So yes, that just kicking us off into a little bit of housekeeping. It's 9:08 in the AM. Let me move this over here so I can screen share. I got a few things out. Unfortunately, 2 videos completely borked on me, and I'm trying to find some other solutions. One of the things we're going to talk about at the end of this podcast is just some of the ways that maybe we can streamline some of the commentary, some of the content that I want to put out. Because my current video production process is such where being all on my own as a solo producer is kind of getting in the way of being able to get out as much commentary as I'd like. And I already make a lot of stuff. So I'm looking for ways to have longer term conversations in a way that is still easy to produce. It's now 9:09 in the AM. We're gonna get through housekeeping in under 20 minutes. I'm putting the gauntlet down. I don't know that that's what I'm really doing. So one of the first things that I wanted to highlight last week was this sort of explosion of sort of articles and news pieces about Apple's solution for improving face unlock in a world where a lot of us are wearing masks out in public. And I think that's good. I mean, I think it's important to notify consumers that there's a change coming to security policies on something like a smartphone, and that this could potentially be a solution for someone to try and fix the ergonomics, the convenience of their security settings. A lot of people, even in my circles of family and friends, have been complaining. I have 2 relatives who just point blank told me, hey, yeah, it's a pain, and I'm wearing a mask. Like, I'm trying to stay safe out in public, so I'm just going to turn off the security on my phone. That's kind of where we are with Face Unlock. Ideally, we would have other solutions like a fingerprint scanner, but we don't. Or, I mean, like some of my family who really don't need iPhone 12 Pro Maxes should probably be on phones like the iPhone SE. So, with all of that conversation and with all of those news stories kind of bumping up this idea, it kind of popped up for me that Apple will always get big headlines for anything they do on the iPhone. But there are similar situations in Android land that aren't getting similar coverage. There are people who maybe have to wear gloves and can't use fingerprint sensors for the line of work that they're in. There are people who are wearing masks and maybe have a Pixel 4. Pixel 4 is one of the few phones that relied exclusively on Face Unlock. Or maybe you have another phone that has Face Unlock and a fingerprint sensor, and maybe you just prefer the Face Unlock, but you can't use it while you're wearing a mask. So I made a video just kind of reminding people in the snarkiest way possible that Face Unlock, we can still use features like Smart Lock on our Android phones. Give us a little bit more customization over how we lock and protect our devices. It is not as secure as what Apple's doing with their version of Face ID, but it's still substantially better than disabling the biometric or password security on your device, because it's just inconvenient to use some kind of lock or setting on your phone like that. So use Face Unlock with the mask on any phone. Title of the video that went up early last week. And again, I got a bit twitchy and snarky about it because it does kind of upset me that in article and after article after article of Apple's solution for this problem, I couldn't find any reference of the customization options available to Android users. And so, when I bring this up, I know there are going to be people who say like, well, Apple's solution is more secure. Like, okay, cool. Still doesn't change the fact that there are other ways to improve the situation outside of that. And in Android land, it doesn't require you to buy an Apple Watch to fix this issue. You can use anything. So anyway, you want a reminder or tutorial, Smart Lock. It's a fine time to pay attention to it. I actually should have made something about this at the beginning of this global pandemic. So we'll see how that goes. Especially, thankfully, there's some little glimmers of light at the end of this tunnel. Oh man, we've got more. Gary the Fireman for Aussie Beach Bum, Chatty Boy. Those subs, I really appreciate it. And thank you again, the support. That's phenomenal. That's greatly appreciated. Dave Burns with a highlighted message. Apple has such large market share in North America and Western Europe. Their updates affect a disproportionately large number of users, whereas because of Android distribution and fractured nature, stuff like this reaches a smaller critical mass. Okay, that's totally fair. North America, we can kind of count on Apple occupying about 50 to 60% of the smartphone buying numbers any given quarter. Still 50 to 40% or on some flavor of Android that might want to know. And again, I feel it's also appropriate to draw these up as comparisons. I think it's actually a consumer benefit to say, if you are ultimately this grade of security conscious, or you're worried about security aspects, this is what it looks like in Android land, and this is what it looks like in Apple land, and that can maybe help guide a purchasing decision one way or the other. Balancing security against convenience is always going to be a critical conversation. All right, moving right along. The other major video that I put out, I finally spent some time summing up my experiences using the Sony a7S III. I didn't want to do sort of a traditional review because the camera's been out for a little bit and I'm not really breaking any crazy news. I'm not like blowing anyone's mind when I talk about like, this is a really good camera and it's beautifully designed to feature on video content creation features. So my tack on this wasn't so much, let me tell you all about this camera that you know about. I kind of wanted to jump into a bit more of a personal conversation about my own video production style, my workflow, and what it means to kind of have different tools to accomplish different tasks. And so it's a little bit shorter of a video. It's not one of my like 20-minute deep dives. This is how the thumbstick works for the menu settings. Like I just didn't really feel like we needed to have that. But I could point out, like, I'm using Micro Four Thirds. I'm doing this now. I'm streaming this now on a Panasonic G85, and then I use a G9 for a lot of my B-roll. In comparing these different systems and these different formats, I didn't want it to just be a generic like, well, the bokeh is better on the full frame. This camera is more expensive, and wouldn't you know it, it shoots better video. I kind of wanted to just tailor this a little bit more, and it's something that I'm hoping to lean into a bit more on my channel just for reviews in general. I feel it's increasingly important that I personalize my commentary with a slightly more upfront presentation of the things I like and the things I don't. This kind of spoke to me after the next piece of housekeeping I'm going to get into. Let's get into the next piece of housekeeping. I always enjoy having conversations with Daniel Bader over at Android Central. So Daniel had me on for my second appearance on the AC podcast, episode 512, extended remix featuring some gadget guy. This was another lovely conversation. It's like a 90-minute chat, just talking about some of our experiences in the world of gadget reviewing, in the conversation surrounding technology, and in how we fit into parts of this discussion. And of course, having me on to kind of talk about this kind of stuff, a lot of it is very much in line with the conversations we have on this weekly podcast. Daniel Bader is a very gracious host, and I feel like he was very permissive of letting me kind of soapbox about a few things that make me very cranky. But one of the things that we sort of dug into, not explicitly, but just the notion of different perspectives, different points of view, why we craft content the way that we do, and understanding like the market pressure of being a content creator. Every minute that goes into producing a piece of content needs to kind of be balanced against what time it takes out of your life and whether or not you're going to be sort of compensated for that effort, whether or not it's going to balance out. I have a small home office. I work out of this office. It's a tax write-off having this chunk of land sort of dedicated not towards family areas or a living area or having guests over. We're not having guests over because of what's going on, but like this can't be reconverted back into a bedroom easily. If someone wants to just kind of crash with us for a few days and visit, like they still need to sleep on the couch. So that has to be compensated for. I can't make stuff just for the feel goods of making stuff. This is an industry and it's a business, and so those conversations are very precious. I don't think techies really enjoy knowing that we have to balance monetization against the editorial so that we can arrive at something that keeps this business afloat. And I feel like Daniel, more so than most, has actually been fairly upfront about how Android Central operates. Like, what you're getting, how their affiliates work, how their content is produced. Like, you don't need to dig deep. You don't need to dig far. You don't need to dig deep to figure out how the sausage is made. And so one of the things that I walked away from this conversation saying is, I'm a singular editorial voice. I'm not a team. I'm not beholden to some notion of supporting a specific audience. And so I think it's probably more fair to the audience to be upfront about like these are the preferences that I enjoy. This is kind of my bias, and for folks to understand where it is that I'm coming from. That way you can value the conversation as much as you want to. We know Juan's really into audio stuff. He's really into hearing health, and we know he loves digging into video production capabilities of tiny little pocketable portable devices. If that's not your bag, then you don't need to weight my opinion as critically in your purchasing decision. And so kind of taking a page from like the Renee Richies and I almost said Techno Buffalo, John Redinger, where their pivots were a bit more personal. I kind of feel like my commentary needs to exist in a similar vein. Daniel Bader is the bomb, says Dave Burns. I agree. And Across the Podcast says that they really enjoyed that podcast and that they've been subbed for a while. I'm really glad. From Braden, I'm glad that Daniel could let you talk without taking offense. And I felt like Daniel was exactly the right kind of person to have that kind of a conversation with, because the entire nature of our public commentary on these topics has been very public. When Android Central started shifting some of their monetization efforts and started leaning into affiliate marketing, and you need to pay for a team. If you're going to send someone to a trade show, if you're going to constantly be buying airline tickets to Unpacked events and developer conferences, like this stuff costs a lot of money to make. And so when we start seeing a trend towards manufacturers and especially larger manufacturers being able to game that system, knowing that there's a significant amount of economic pressure on the outlets that are creating this content, if we don't entertain some conversations about that issue, then it makes the survival of an outlet like Android Central even less clear. It makes it even more difficult for them to produce content. It makes it more difficult for them to keep the lights on, to monetize, and to exist with some notion of editorial objectivity. We now craft a very specific kind of tech conversation in the tech community, which is super short-lived. And it's one of the things that I want to push back against, but pushing back against it makes my channel less and less popular, makes my channel less and less viewed, less and less shared. YouTube sees that as a trend. I lose out on more monetization, and then it's an incentive for me to not make that content. It can't be clearer. It's like if I try to have these conversations, we all complain like, why isn't there more long-term coverage? There isn't any like really good long-term coverage outside of a couple little pocket niche communities because there's no money in it. And not only is there no money in it, if you try to stage your conversations with a YouTube algorithm that focuses on trending topics, your channel is punished for it. You show up less in search, you show up less in recommendations. You're not one of those trending topics people, so we're going to make sure that you're served up to like the 10 people in your subscribers list who do really seem to care about that. But outside of that, we're going to chill anyone finding your channel. And that's part of what Daniel and I have to discuss. I didn't really feel like anything I said was incendiary. Like, I feel like a number of us in the creator space are facing these existential crises in different ways, but I think a lot of us have been pointing to this for a while now. We can see a number of people, especially a number of people at sort of my tier, like 300,000 subscribers and fewer. A lot of them are having kind of a rough go of what to make of YouTube in this modern era. Oh, and Al Spockley, that was a great podcast. I warmly recommend it for listening. Well, I appreciate it. And Dave Burns, running a blog is becoming less and less lucrative as Google optimizes their platform to increase their ad revenue. Google is becoming a much more obnoxious middleman between blogs and their readers. And we can definitely extrapolate that even more aggressively to YouTube. I feel YouTube's current platform resembles Facebook. If you have a popular page on Facebook and you post something, Facebook directly tells you that you do not reach all of the people who are subscribed to your page, all of the people in your community. You need to pay to reach the people who have already said they want to see your stuff. And to me, that's sort of a mafia-style digital extortion. It's a great community you got here. Sure would be a shame if, if like 80% of the people that are subscribed to you, they ain't gonna see what you just posted unless, you know what I'm saying? You gotta grease those wheels. And I feel like YouTube is now following in a similar track, but instead of it being an outright ad fee, like you need to pay to promote, instead of that, it's more, are you appeasing an algorithm which is looking for spikes of immediate viewership? And if you're not, well, all those people that are subscribed to your channel, they're never going to hear from you unless you play the game. Azaran, some mafia guy. That's what I'm saying. Sure. It's just, gotta pay the vig, is what I'm saying. Dave Burns, sure would be a shame if this baseball bat hit your fandom. So, the conversation isn't all about that. We talked about the Pixel 5 camera, why it's being excluded from camera comparisons. We talked about the OnePlus 9 rumors, what we were kind of hoping to see from a OnePlus. Something else that we also talked about on Best of Our Week, which, oh no, I forgot to pull that up. Hold on. Let me get this here. So TK and I are starting a new channel. We've been streaming now for 9 episodes, and we're calling the show Best of Our Week. An interactive tech conversation, much like the one that you're having here, but with the slightly more of a focus on just TK and I kind of wrapping up. Hey, what'd you do this week, buddy? And then he can come back and say, hey, this is what I worked on, pal. So adding yet another podcast into the streams that we're already producing, again, it's kind of the death. It's algorithmic death. If we do another like 90-minute to 2-hour stream and it gets this amount of watch time and then people don't share it, YouTube punishes the whole channel. They're making less popular content. We can't share them as aggressively. So as much as it pains me to say like we're kind of leaning into some of this algorithm stuff, we decided that for both of our personal channels, it's the right play to make a new channel. So that new channel, Best of Our Week. Best of Our Week, TK Bay and Juan Bagnell Tech Chat. We currently have 37 subscribers. Woo woo! But we're working on live streams. We're getting older episodes up. We're going to be sort of filling out all of the stuff that we've been producing together. It's going to live here, and then hopefully also a place for us to maybe also produce some of the other like YouTube shorts, play with the community tab a little bit more, things that neither of us have been super consistent with on our own channel. So it's obnoxious. It's a whole new separate community from our individual channels where we feel like those audiences have a lot of overlap, and it's playing the YouTube game in a way that I don't like having to do, but it's kind of the best option for us in making something new. So it's a weekly podcast. We stream Thursday nights, and we know we stream kind of late because we have families. And occasionally we like to see our families, but it's something I hope you guys will check out. I hope you'll support. Give it a subscribe, give it a listen. And I am almost done with the back end stuff for an audio version of the podcast. So because this is really conversation heavy, just like my weekly Monday show and just like TK's Saturday stream, it's something that if you would prefer just to download an MP3 and just kind of have us on in the background as we kind of chat this stuff out, there will be that opportunity for an audio version of the podcast. It's going to be a Pinecast RSS feed. It's going to show up in all of the podcast catchers on Apple, on Google, on Spotify, all that good stuff. So, JMX Warrior, 39 subscribers. Oh, Matt, Juan and TK will take over our 75 subscribers in a week. Oh, buddy. I mean, again, it's if this were something we could host on a personal channel, like, because TK and I are both over 100,000 subscribers on our personal YouTube channels, we probably would have left it. But these long form videos, like, I'm going to finish this live stream on Twitch. I'm going to upload this video to YouTube. It's probably going to get between 1,000 and 2,000 views on my personal YouTube channel, but it's still going to contribute to your videos are less popular. This video is not being watched to completion. The percentage of the watch time is not keeping up with the rest of your other videos. And you're like, so you're going to punish me for getting someone to watch 15 minutes of a conversation where I normally put out 6 to 10 minute videos. Cool. That's great, YouTube. That's rad. Gabaletta, if you haven't subscribed, what's wrong with you? I like that. Some people can be the carrot, others can be the stick. The other thing that I want to point out for housekeeping, just to wrap up housekeeping, I'm already running way too late on housekeeping. I said it was going to be under 20 minutes, and I have failed. Let me cue this up. My next video is out on reviews.org. Do you have 5G or 5G? And I went on a field trip down to Venice Beach, California, looking for ultra wideband Verizon 5G, and I had the Sony Xperia Pro at the time, and did some speed tests around the neighborhoods, and tried to see what that kind of experience was like and whether or not it's been improving. It's kind of timely. This is kind of getting into our first full year of 5G rollouts in different communities, and the reviews.org team kind of wanted to see what that would look like. So we put together a video, and you can catch that on reviews.org. Do you have 5G? Or if you look for a 5G field trip, you'll find that video. All right. Dave Burns, I don't understand the question. Would you make a podcast channel? Do you mean for this stream? Because I don't want to have to support yet another YouTube channel. Call me old and cranky, but one of the things that actually worked back in the day was when YouTube started cultivating playlists. And I still put videos into categories based on these playlist topics. I used to get a lot of traffic to people that would follow a specific playlist. So if you only wanted to catch my audio videos, there's a playlist for that. You could bookmark that or keep that as your main focus. I mean, like if you only wanted to catch the videos that I highlight for LG, there's an LG playlist and you can follow that. As YouTube has evolved, they've devalued comments. They've devalued that kind of public conversation. It's an extra click. It's more effort just to get into the feed of the conversation that you're seeing, especially on mobile where a lot of people are watching these videos. And then that it seems to push the other community aspects further and further and further into the background. They want you to use the community tab to turn YouTube into more of a Facebook style community platform, but they've kind of shut off the more immediate access to how you can organize your videos for people who are interested in a specific topic. And so I don't want to have to create a whole new channel, work to get it monetized, work to promote it, divide the people that are already subscribed to my main channel in the hopes that this will kind of improve the situation for the videos, the produced videos that aren't podcast format. I don't have the time. I really don't. I don't have the energy. I don't have the interest. I don't like making more and more and more content for YouTube to then categorize it in exactly the way that they need me to, knowing that I'll jump through all of those hoops and this time next year, the relationship will have changed and YouTube will have moved the goalposts and what worked for us this time is now not going to work for all of the work that we've done to fulfill the other format issues. So I'm kind of just going to plug along until I see some good evidence that like that kind of compartmentalization matters. But it's also why I hold the primary version of these conversations on Twitch, with a much smaller audience and a much smaller community, and the support of some really awesome people like Gary the Fireman and Matt Tyler, and I see Alice Bockley in there too. The monetization on these live streams is already beating and well eclipsing the monetization of these exact same videos on YouTube. So why would I go through the effort of jumping through YouTube's hoops to make way less money, have poorer conversations, less joined conversations, and hope that at the end of all of that, YouTube stops hurting my produced videos? It seems like a loss to me. It seems like a lot of effort to expend to not get to the results that I want. JMX a Warrior, ultra wideband, do you mean millimeter wave? So that is discussed in this video on reviews.org, that there are different technologies for 5G, and that some of those technologies have brand names and what the actual name of that technology is. So JMX, that is a very good question. I would maybe watch that video to see what the commentary might answer it. From Heiki, I think you can play a little bit of the algorithm game. You have your honest channel and its true honest job that takes some toll on your energy levels. You can think the new one like a bit of a vacation. Sometimes it's so good to go to holiday and just enjoy your martini on the beach and relax watching others do the work. So your and TK's new channel is like that vacation with a beach on it. I mean, the channel TK and I are starting is being built just on the back of the fact that TK and I used to hang out IRL, AFK for reals. And we haven't been able to do that. And it's sort of also us keeping our friendship active, is like, these are the kinds of chats that we'd have about weekly anyway. So instead of like just kind of scurrying off to share a couple Twitter DMs, we're just going to put our bromance public, and you guys can all be along for the ride. Let's see. Oh, my tech review. Thanks to TK Bay, you're the best bud ever. TK is one of the most gracious and most supporting individuals on the internet, and deserves all of the praise and goodwill that I think he earns on a regular basis. All right, it is now 9:40, and I have gone way too long on what should have been a fairly straightforward housekeeping, but everything that we're going to talk about, all of the housekeeping links, all of the news articles that we're going to discuss are going to be live on somegadgetguy.com. You can catch the show notes for every week's episode. And of course, always, if you're coming to this later and you don't want to have to keep a YouTube or a Twitch window open, there is going to be an audio version of this podcast too. All right. Let me get this out of the way here. We're starting off with a little net neutrality news. Whenever there's some FCC conversation happening in the public, it's, let me get this here. TK Bay is in the chat shouting out amazing people, and there's a delightful love fest happening in the comments here, and I'm very happy to be hosting a platform for that, because it's the goodwill we need in our tech community right now. So, FCC news, we are currently operating with a new temporary head of the FCC, Rosenworcel. She was one of the most outspoken critics of Ajit Pai's policy. And this is going to be an interesting news topic to keep an eye on. I have been very vocal about supporting a federal standard for net neutrality and regulating the internet like a utility. And one of the reasons why is because it's the pro-business move to make. If you do not have a top federal standard, you open the door for every state in the United States to push back and craft their own different legislation for how internet traffic and internet commerce should be regulated. If you're a conservative and you care about business, it is good to have a federal standard that everyone can agree to. This is how we operate on the internet, as opposed to every state making up their own rules, especially if you live in a red state, because that means California and New York will probably set the standard for the strictest regulations. And because of their population densities, I feel most companies will just play ball to that level. Case in point, we are looking at, let me get this back. Okay. A story from Reuters, written up by David Shepardson. U.S. Justice Department drops challenge to California's state net neutrality law. Under then President Donald Trump, the Justice Department in 2018 argued that federal law preempted the state statute prohibiting internet service providers from blocking or throttling traffic or offering paid fast lanes. California's legislature voted to adopt its own statute after the FCC in 2017 repealed net neutrality rules put in place by the administration of former President Barack Obama. Acting FCC chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel praised the Justice Department's decision. Quote, "When the FCC, over my objection, rolled back its net neutrality policies, states like California sought to fill the void with their own laws. By taking this step, Washington is listening to the American people who overwhelmingly support an open internet and is charting a course to once again make net neutrality the law of the land." So, net neutrality was a decade-long battle in the courts to eventually arrive at a fairly loose and kind of, I don't want to say toothless, but I would say very reactionary regulatory stance on internet traffic. But it did get one thing absolutely correct, and that was classifying the internet as a telecommunication service and putting it into the same conversation as a public utility, as phone lines, as electricity. And I feel over the last year, we've proven how necessary this data connection is to the future of our economy, the future of our education, and the future of healthcare. I have been saying that since the open internet order. It took a global pandemic to prove we need to rely on this stuff to get work done, to get school done, to see our doctors under less demanding circumstances, and that we should be treating it in a fashion that resembles how we regulate other public utilities. So, there's still going to be a legal challenge internal in California facing that law, but at least the state of California doesn't need to fight a federal lawsuit, which was kind of reactive and punitive. Basically, California said, well, you're giving up your right to regulate the internet. We're going to step in and regulate it for Californians. And then Ajit Pai said, nuh-uh. So again, it was to me, that's a legally germane but morally hypocritical stance to take. We're giving up our ability to regulate the internet, but you can't, because we don't believe in states' rights as Republicans. So that was a frustrating aspect of our political conversation back in 2017. So we're going to start seeing some of this stuff unravel. The court case still facing California's law for net neutrality should be an interesting watch. But at some point, we all kind of do need to get back on some track of properly classifying the tubes that get us to the internet as the same kinds of cables and wires and tubes that deliver water, electricity, and telephone communications. We're long overdue rectifying that oversight. Oh, man. Oh, so McCorcoran 3 is bringing up an issue with legalizing cannabis in South Dakota. And I was just reading up on that. And yeah, that was pretty brutal. But we're going to keep moving on here. Not only, I'm going to link the Reuters article, which, here, let me go back into screen share for just a sec. The Reuters article, pretty well summed up. But the other thing I'm also going to link is Rosenworcel's direct statement from FCC.gov. And so you can grab a PDF of her full statement on this position. Like I said, if you're not following her on Twitter, this is the woman who is currently in charge of the direction we're going to take for regulating telecommunications. So I feel in our hobby, in our line of interest, that is a very important person to be paying attention to. I have greatly appreciated her commentary during the Agit Pi days. Whether or not you're sort of leaning with me on these types of issues, that's the individual who is going to be directing the course of this commission for the foreseeable future. Let me get it. And exactly, McCorcoran 3 is saying the FCC commissioner is one of the most powerful jobs with some of the least scrutiny on it in a lot of the time. That's why I really liked Tom Wheeler. I really felt when Tom Wheeler was appointed, he was going to be a telecom shill, and he turned out to be a pretty even-handed regulator. I didn't feel his policy was ever overly punitive or reactive. His commentary was always super public, like starting the conversation about the open internet order and the FCC taking on net neutrality was a very public presentation, as opposed to Powell. When Powell was the head of the FCC, there were a lot of these votes that would happen like middle of the night, closed door sessions for debate, and there wasn't a lot of transparency on how Powell ran the FCC. And Tom Wheeler turned out to be kind of a breath of fresh air. We're so much more aware of what the FCC does because of the time Tom Wheeler spent as the head of the FCC. So I'm hoping to return to that, where the head of the FCC is not just a terrible punchline to a joke that nobody asked, but look at this wacky, oversized coffee mug. Tasty memes. I want a grown-up who's actually going to lead discussion and debate on these policies, because we have a lot of things that we need to fix. Speaking of Dakota, Matt Tyler won for president. No, I am completely unelectable. Let's not start that super PAC to start funneling money into my campaign. Instead, I would greatly, I would request that anyone considering contributing to my political run for the Senate or for the presidency instead look at their local food banks and put that money to better use. All right. The Pinko Kami candidate. You know, while he was talking about the FCC, he was wearing a red shirt. That's true. I saw it. Our snarky future president. I'm absolutely the worst ideologue to ever position to the executive branch of the United States of America. All right. North Dakota may force Apple and Google to allow alternative app stores on mobile phones. This is coming by way of Notebook Check, written up by Sam Medley. North Dakota Senate Bill 2333 essentially aims to prevent Google and Apple from forcing developers into their respective app stores. Perhaps more keenly, the bill also targets the company's draconian payment systems, allowing app developers to use alternative methods for receiving payment. I'm not going to dig into the particulars of this bill. I would highly recommend that people go out and read it. My last point about net neutrality: when there is a vacuum at the federal level for how we regulate a particular industry, it opens the doors to every state, every governor, every attorney general in the United States to start crafting their own ability to try and impact how a market might function, or how an industry might do business with their customer base. I'm obviously in favor. And one of the reasons why I lean towards Android is I like having choice and I like having options and I like being able to customize. I am obviously leaning towards the idea that this sounds pretty good, but there is a business and fair or a business and free market argument to be made that the government should not be able to step in and tell Apple how they conduct business. But then we need to look at those stats where 50% of the phones sold in North America are going to have that Apple logo, and only one company controls the entire ecosystem, hardware availability, repairability, and the software that can be run on that device. That is a monopolistic business practice. So we now have lawmakers in North Dakota wading into this debate to say, no, we don't like how this is going down, and there needs to be some other competition in this market sector. And it's because our federally elected officials have been very slow to examine the business ramifications of how big data and social media and telecommunications companies do business. So now we're going to have an increasing number of legal challenges, of appeals, and other states that I'm sure are looking at this in North Dakota to then say, well, wait a minute. How else can we impact how Google does business with their customers? What do we do about Facebook? What is Twitter doing with their terms of service? Does the FTC need to get involved on some of these regulatory issues? And there's going to be a lot of challenges to these conversations. So this one, when it popped up, especially after, Epic in their lawsuit against Apple, Google facing regulatory pressure in the EU on how they do business with their customers and how that data is utilized. This one was a very interesting challenge to read through. So it's on Notebook Check, Sam Medley. Definitely give it a read and actually click on the bill. North Dakota State Senate Bill 2333. Give it a read. And then I feel like there's something in there to kind of rankle or for all of us to look at, to support or to disagree with. This is not as cut and dry as, well, I'm pro-business. Well, there are a number of Apple developers that are very upset with how Apple does business on their App Store. So if we're pro-business, what business are we pro for? Are we pro Apple's monopolistic grasp of their App Store, or are we pro developers? So that conversation gets wide and varied, and the debate is very interesting. From Doomer. Android 12 may add alternative store support, as in you'll be able to select the default store app, which I think is really cool because I like using alternative stores like F-Droid and Aurora. I read that too. I couldn't find... It wasn't brought up in this specific article. One of the first Reddit posts that I saw about North Dakota's law here, a proposed law here, was also talking about how there might be changes coming from that Google side because Google is trying to head off a legal challenge that they are preventing competition. And I think it's also because of EU policy. So they're going to try and make that a bit more explicit, kind of like the early web browser days with Microsoft. So Microsoft, monopolistic business practice of including Internet Explorer with Windows, and was forced to have like a splash screen when you booted a new computer to say, what web browser would you like to use? We have to let you install any web browser you want. And so something like that, if Google does it proactively, it means they get to escape some of the legal challenges that Apple is currently facing. And again, it's just fascinating watching the wheels of this mechanism move us around different potential outcomes. Whether or not we're going to like those outcomes is yet to be seen. But I think this kind of stuff is fascinating. McCorcoran 3. So it's not unreasonable to impose strict regulations to Apple if they're going to control so much of the smartphone market, although we should all stop buying Apple and Samsung if we want competition in the market. Yeah, I mean, I like other phones, so sure. From Gabaletta, working in the automotive industry, we have to have 3 versions of brake cleaner because of different regulations in different states. I can't imagine how bad it would get for companies if every state had their own regulations differing from each other. And that's kind of the point that I feel needs to be discussed. From some sort of libertarian fantasy, like a libertarian utopia, I actually do agree that the free market could work out most of these issues. I do. I kind of feel like fair and open trade and competition solves more issues in the long run. It's also why I like to talk about alternative smartphone brands to Apple and Samsung. More competition means all of our products get better. Just the Apple versus Android or iOS versus Android debate makes our products less exciting. They're less interesting. Eventually, those two competitors will arrive at a very similar experience until a third place comes in and disrupts what those two are getting lazy about. You need more to shake this market up. And so, when we're talking about the regulatory side of this and the business side of this, it's also why we need to be very precious with how these companies do business. Because the next story kind of leans into that conversation about regulations too. I'm only bringing this up as a continuation of the conversation that we started. So I'm not going to dig too deep into this one either, but Ars Technica, written up by Jim Salter, NVIDIA wants to buy CPU designer ARM and Qualcomm is not happy about it. So this isn't super deep, hard-hitting news. We talked about it. NVIDIA wants to buy ARM. And that's the company that basically designs the majority of chipsets that go into phones and tablets. ARM doesn't make anything. They make a reference design, and then other companies can adopt that reference design, license that reference design, or also kind of like modify it depending on the licensing. And I'm grossly oversimplifying. Like I'm boiling this down to an overly simplistic place. But NVIDIA wants to step in. NVIDIA, they make GPUs, they make graphics processing units. They also make a bunch of hardware for industrial use. They're heavily involved in the tech behind smart cars and self-driving automobiles. NVIDIA is pretty broad. So they want to buy ARM, and I think that Qualcomm has a decent argument to be made that if NVIDIA, who does manufacture GPUs and chipsets and computer processing hardware, owns the ability to build and license the reference designs for all of the processors that go into phones, that is a potential conflict of interest. That NVIDIA can direct an entire market of phones and tablets and always connected PCs and Windows on ARM. NVIDIA can direct the course of that industry to benefit their own manufacturing and their own hardware sales. And again, it can be used to chill the relationships with other vendors. Like Samsung is going to be working with AMD to make a version of their phone processor that uses an AMD GPU. We're pretty confident that's going to come next year. NVIDIA has shown in the past that they can direct the course of the laptop market to chill competition from AMD. In fact, AMD has received quite a bit of money in lawsuits between Intel and NVIDIA on how those market manipulations can manifest. So Ars Technica, a great sort of write-up on where we are right now. So we heard about this a couple months back. We sort of talked about the news, talked about the headline, but this is something to keep our eyes on because this is a huge story. The ramifications of this are enormous. Every single product you interact with can play into this conversation about ARM. The next laptop you buy might have an ARM-based chipset in it. The next phone you pick up likely has a processor from Qualcomm inside. How these companies battle each other out in court, and also in the court of public opinion, has huge and far-reaching ramifications that are spider-webbed out in ways that we'll never be able to predict today. And the ramifications could be felt 20 or 30 years from now is how entangled all of this stuff is. Dave Burns, NVIDIA is about to take over the world. Well, I mean, if they pull this off, I see there's a part of me where NVIDIA's design and their chip fabrication could be a boon to the mobile industry. The actual tech side of this, NVIDIA has tremendous resources to make some really cool stuff. And combining their GPU acumen with maybe a refined approach to performance improvements at the CPU level, and then dovetailing that into all of their AI research. Like, I just keep picking it up. Like, what if I had an NVIDIA GPU in my phone, which had the capabilities of things like RTX voice, where in real time I could get noise cancellation and speech processing that still to my ear sounds like magic. Like, I can't fathom that they're able to do this in real time, where I can record with video and there is no lag in processing noise removal from my speech. That should be impossible. Like, again, if you told me 2 years ago that we'd be able to do that with off-the-shelf components, GPUs you can go and buy in a store, I would have viscerally mocked you for believing in the fantasy of science fiction. And yet, I can click a button on my computer today. It's in my taskbar right now. All I need to do is a right click and a left click, and my speech can be processed immediately. Insane. Now imagine putting that into a piece of telecommunications equipment, right? Like, I know phone is really the least used app on your pocket computer, but that's a tangible benefit. You fire up a video call, you jump on the phone with someone, and an NVIDIA GPU processing that data in real time so that you have crystal clear, perfectly presented speech would be insane. I want that so bad, but I don't know that I want it at the exclusivity of NVIDIA owning the entire market for all of the processing power that goes into our phones. So I am conflicted. All right. I'm actually gonna. Okay, let me just say what this next story would have been. I'm not gonna dig too deep into it. It's just annoying. Google Photos gets new paywalled editing features for Google One subscribers. I don't like that every service is becoming some kind of paid subscription. So now, if you want more of the advanced AI processing capabilities in Google Photos, you're going to have a Google One subscription. I think the thing that bothers me is that Google has built so much of their goodwill for Google Photos on it being a free service that sort of plays into, you know, their sort of services ecosystem. Google Photos is a part of your Gmail, is a part of your Google Drive. It's all hyper interconnected. And now they're reducing the storage for it. They're whittling back on the benefits for it. And at the same time, they're pushing people towards a subscription model. Software isn't free. Cloud storage isn't free. I understand that you need to monetize some of these services. I just don't like the way that Google is doing it by pulling back. You know, again, you built your service on cool, on accessible, on free. You got everybody kind of hooked on it, kind of like a drug dealer. And then like, oh, but the next hit's going to cost you. And that's what I kind of have an issue with. So I don't know if this changes your idea of Google Photos. For me, I'm happy that most of my editing I do in Snapseed, which is a Google-owned product, but it's totally free. And then when I need to dig in a little bit more, I'm now using Photomate R3. I paid $10 for it once. It is not a subscription service. I don't need to pay every year or every month to keep editing the photos that live on my phone. And it's pretty feature complete. It lacks some of the really fun AI processing features that are in like Lightroom, but it's a great way to process raw files and has pretty good noise reduction filters as well. So if you're really into filters and stuff, Google Photos, Snapseed, I totally get it. But if you want to dig a little deeper into photo editing, I would recommend another service or another app, something that lets you kind of manipulate data in a more controlled way. And like, again, I don't need to pay for a Google One, Android One, whatever subscription just to access a few more of these features that are all processed locally on my device. That's another thing that really bugs me is like, well, you can't batch process unless you pay us a subscription fee. Why? All of the local computing is being done on my hardware. Paying you a subscription just so I can use the processor in my phone isn't the thing. Dank Pickman, the joke is on you. I'm going to buy an OG Pixel 1. There's still those stories, the articles. If you want free photo backups, buy an original Pixel, and then you can use that to. But the thing is, like, that's a temporary solution. At some point, Google's also probably just going to pull the plug on that. You know, not right away, but you know, you're going to have to figure out another solution. And I think what's going to be very apparent is, let's say you back up all of those photos. What's happening to people now is once the Google Photos starts counting against your total storage, if you've been dumping a lot of photos and videos on Google Photos, you're going to eradicate your storage for Gmail and for Google Drive. And it immediately puts an incentive on, like, I guess I got to buy, you know, not just the 200 gig tier. I better just go to a terabyte. That's what I mean is, like, you made it so easy to just dump all of this info on Google services, and then you created a pressure point for all those people so that they would have to not only spend, but likely need to spend more, considering how much data is accrued when you let these things just sort of run on autopilot. And McCorcoran, techies can adjust, but normies will just give their money to Google. Unless we kind of wave them away from it. You know, we can be the light and change we want to see in the world. From Doomer, if they're making some editing features subscription-based, it makes me worried at the idea of Google removing Snapseed in the future. Excuse me. I'm less worried about that in the near term, because as soon as Google pulls the plug on Snapseed or makes it like a paid or subscription-based service, I think that's just more momentum for all the people that were kind of inclined to be sharing on Instagram or Facebook to just use the built-in filters. Or if, like, you have a Samsung or an LG, you go into your photos or your gallery app, and they're already built-in filtering and editing tools directly from the manufacturer. So I don't think that's going to be too worrisome. It would make me sad because I like Snapseed for very, very quick edits and adjustments, but it's an opportunity. If Google does that to Snapseed, we say, hey, just use the built-in photo editor and the filters on Instagram. If that's where you're going to share it anyway, F off Snapseed. If you wanted to do more, if you wanted more of the developing tools or the granular controls, look at an app like Photomate. And you'll pay for it once. And the last update we got fixed a lot of really obnoxious little UI issues. Like, it was a great update on that app. Go for it. I mean, again, like, that developer is putting out a Lightroom alternative that you pay for once. That's worth it. I mean, just to be free of this, like, constant pressure of seeing that bill show up on your credit card every month. But it does make me miss, like, well, you know, whatever happened to Flickr? So I wanted to cap the news block with one other just story that kind of was charming and heartwarming and infuriating all at the same time. I'm probably going to be shooting a video on this for reviews.org, just for what little timeliness there is still on this that's still left. But apparently, if you're getting terrible service from your ISP, the only way to fix it is by publicly shaming them and spending thousands and thousands of dollars to do it. So this is also written up by Ars Technica, John Brodkin. Again, I would highly recommend following John's writing. I love his editorial style on these types of stories. AT&T scrambles to install fiber for 90-year-old after his viral Wall Street Journal ad. So this is a gentleman who was so upset with AT&T, as AT&T makes a whole bunch of claims about how they've got all this technology and you can get this great data connection and internet and it's so fast and look at the speed. But in his neighborhood, AT&T only served DSL with a max 3 megabit per second download. 3 meg. So it's not even broadband. You can't call that broadband. Broadband is already terribly classified. Like 25 meg down is all you need for broadband. He could only get 3 meg down. And he lived about 3 blocks away from a community that had AT&T fiber. But they just couldn't roll it out to his neighborhood. It's too expensive. The community that he lives in 3 blocks away is not profitable enough. So they just can't do it. So he spent $10,000, 10 grand to pay for a quarter-page ad in the Wall Street Journal. Dear Mr. Stankey, AT&T prides itself as a leader in electronics communication. Unfortunately for the people who live in North Hollywood, California, AT&T is now a major disappointment. 10 grand. We all have 10 grand lying around, right? $10,000 that we can just throw at some kind of communications platform to lobby, right? I just take 10 grand out of my pocket right now and go to like a radio station and buy a bunch of airtime to talk about how my upload speeds are woefully insufficient for the amount of work we try to do from our cable connection these days. So anyway, 10 grand, it goes viral. People are picking it up left and right. He even makes it it makes an appearance on Stephen Colbert's Late Show. It's a bad look for AT&T. So AT&T scrambles to wire up fiber to this one gentleman's house. And that's it. It took 10 grand. It took, according to Mr. Epstein here, he was in regular communication with other people at AT&T. So it wasn't just this one-off, like, I'm so upset, I'm going to go straight to the Wall Street Journal. There was also a not insignificant amount of his time spent trying to push AT&T through, like, normal communications channels of local reps and regional managers and stuff. $10,000 on a Wall Street Journal ad. The ad has to go viral. And then AT&T makes the effort to string fiber just to his house. That's it. The fiber install is accessible 3 or 4 blocks away from where Mr. Epstein lives. None of Epstein's neighbors will get to benefit from him spending $10,000 on this ad. They're all still going to be stuck with 3 megabit speeds, 3 megabit downloads if they're on DSL, because they're still not profitable enough. AT&T's already done the legwork in stringing some of this fiber directly to this one house. They could have used that as an install base and start communicating with the other people in that neighborhood. But no, that's hard. And that could cost a little bit of money, even though they'd be paying for better service and probably paying more as customers. But, that's not how these telecommunications companies really make their profits. They make their profits by doing as little as they possibly can to foster improvements and by working as hard as they can to prevent real competition. So, I mean, I really want you to, like, the win of this is, this gentleman, Mr. Epstein, is now kind of like a minor 15 seconds of internet celebrity. It's a bad look for AT&T, but the effective policy, the effective change is essentially one guy gets symmetrical 300 megabit fiber. And it only cost him $10,000 to not change anything else for the rest of his community, the rest of his neighborhood, or any of his neighbors. Every single one of them would probably need to also spend more and more money to lobby AT&T and to drive the kind of ill will from a PR position to essentially affect the same kind of change. From Dave Burns, but that's the American way. Gary the Fireman, that's why AT&T was broken up in the first place. Well, we're going to take it back to divestiture. Simon says, Hypno, the money to improve broadband should be linked to houses covered. And we've covered this in previous episodes of the podcast. We can't get an accurate accounting of how many houses are covered. So unfortunately, until we can fix that problem, we can't better control the public funds that go into improving broadband, because we literally don't know if they're making any improvement. We've let the telecommunications industry self-report. So we go to AT&T and say, well, how many more people have you covered? And AT&T goes, 11,000 more people. And we go, okay, that's probably correct. And then we walk away. And we let them just sit on mountains of cash, taxpayer dollars, sweetheart zoning deals, tax breaks. We let them charge additional fees on our coverage. We let them, put up data caps and throttling. Like, we've let them do all this stuff, and then we've never held them accountable for their own self-reporting. And that's going to be a really hard fight, because I'm sure the telecommunications industries really like that arrangement. They're probably good with that arrangement. I feel as taxpayers, we should be getting more accountability for our tax dollars being spent on this stuff. From All Greg, maybe they should run a partition through the whole neighborhood until AT&T if they don't do it, but don't drop their cell service. If I were Mr. Epstein, and I'm sure this would violate the terms of service, but I'd be very interested in approaching my neighbors and saying, like, hey, I've got 300 meg down and 300 meg up. What if I ran an Ethernet cable to a router in your home and then set a limit that was faster than the broadband that you're currently getting, but still doesn't completely impact my service too, and we could all share the bill on this? I'm sure AT&T would have some problems with that, but I would very much love to if you're not going to fiber cable up our whole block, maybe I can do it with some repeaters and some routers, because by the end of the block, you're probably down to a symmetrical 25 meg connection, but that's still almost 10 times faster than what AT&T sells. And Gabaletta, exactly. He basically had to strong arm AT&T to get them to solely give him what should have been a standard. If only we had better officials to hold these companies accountable. It starts at the ground floor. We need better laws at the city and state level to sort of enact reasonable policy that supports consumers. But at the same time, it's pretty easy to influence a politician with a couple $1,000s worth of campaign contributions. And unfortunately, the money as speech talks more than the speech as speech. Gary the Fireman, Mr. Epstein should be a new Baby Bell. Excuse me. Oh, and Dave Burns, my only question is, how do we out-lawyer ISPs? We don't. Again, it's a far-flung public battle with tons of money on the line, and very often we lose. Remember the original open internet order, predating the current flavors of net neutrality that we're looking at today. The original OIO was basically toothless. Only covered fixed cable broadband. It didn't cover wireless or any other industry. It didn't cover satellite. It didn't cover anything else. And Verizon was still cranky enough about us trying to implement the original OIO that they sued the federal government and won. Verizon sued the federal government to block a largely toothless regulatory standard that wouldn't have affected their carrier business, their broadband cell phone business, and they won. Again, like 10 of us in Pacoima trying to also like lobby against AT&T. Not likely we're going to win. But we've got to fight the fight more broadly than that. All right. Why don't we take a quick break here? Every podcast has a subreddit. My podcast is no different. Second week in a row, guys. Second week, I have had a very good representation on my own subreddit. I'm feeling pretty good about the content that I'm putting out there, and I mean, as Matt would tell you all, it feels good winning. I like winning because I don't always win in my subreddit, but when I do, it's because, you know, obviously I'm putting out a very high caliber of content, and people would naturally relate to that. All Greg, congrats. Well, thank you, all Greg. Aditya is calling me out like this is kind of sus, but, you know, again, this was actually a down week for sharing to the subreddit. I'm looking at like the Reddit stats. You know, every subreddit you can kind of go in as a moderator. So this was kind of a down week for sharing, and this was also a down week for actual engagement on the upvotes. So when that happens and I share and I try to point people to this community, I think there's a natural tendency towards my content kind of rising up a little bit higher. So folks, if you want that better representation of all of the content that the tech industry is producing, you need to participate. You can't be stingy with the upvotes, and you need to share. So, for the time being, I win again because I upvote and I share. I win. Reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles. And this also got a plug on Daniel Bader's AC podcast. Apparently, Daniel Bader also enjoys the community here at Glowing Rectangles. But again, when he shared it in the context of me putting it up there. And that helped, I think, give me a nudge on my own subreddit. So, A number 1, my video on the Sony A7S III, top voted of the last week. And A number 2, or I guess B number 2, using Face Unlock with any mask on any phone. In the number 2 position, I took spots 1 and 2. Oh, Matt, are you upset? Oh, Matt says this is BS, and he says darn it. And Dave Burns says horse pucky. But let's check again. Let's see. Top stories of the week. Number 1, some gadget guy. Number 2, let's count the votes again. 13 upvotes, some gadget guy. 12 upvotes, some gadget guy. Matt Tyler just saying, hey guys, come help me with the upvotes on other videos. No. I share stuff. I share stuff on Twitter. I share stuff on YouTube. I share stuff on Reddit. I cross-post to other Reddits. I'm doing all of the social media groundwork for sharing and contributing with time and effort. And just, one plug here in the live chat on my podcast with my face on it, I feel is just going to draw more people to my videos. All right, let's get through, because there were some other really good stories that were shared. We've got Alt Dad in number 3, and I really want to point this out because Alt Dad just started their podcast. 44 subscribers. 44. The number 3 video on Glowing Rectangles this week did not come from a channel with 100,000 subscribers, did not come from a channel with 1 million subscribers. It came from a channel with 44 subscribers. And I believe, someone might need to correct me if I'm wrong here, generated the most number of comments. My video had 3, my other video had 3, this had 5 comments. So again, when we're looking at an algorithm that weights sharing, upvoting, and engagement in the top popularity of the subreddit, AltDad has been hustling to try and get to 50 subscribers this month. And deservedly, that effort has paid off in a number 3 finish on reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles. Ha ha! Good work. All right. Just scrolling down, we've got mobile reviews, 280,000 subscribers, looking at how gross your phone is. They do kind of a bacterial study of like swabbing phones. Always useful information in an age of disease. Someone else just plug in one of my promo codes for one more, looking at some earbuds that were on sale for Valentine's Day and how you could get them a little bit cheaper if you used a promo code. I don't know who Alternative Farmer 98 is, but I thought that was a useful little bit of info there if you're looking to save some cash on some really great headphones. We've got Technically T with 32,000 subscribers, Why You Really Don't Enjoy Your iPhone, kind of an editorial on Apple and the ecosystem. We've got Gizmo Hub with 970 subscribers, looking at the Mi 11. Also, Gizmo Hub right after, looking at gaming performance on the Mi 11, this new Snapdragon chipset, playing PUBG and NBA 2K, and whether or not this chipset looks like it's overheating. And then my buddy LFA Reviews, kind of rounding out our top 10. If you love your ears, you should be following LFA. If you don't love your ears, if you hate being able to hear things and you never like listening to music with any kind of fidelity or quality, then do not follow Jeff at El Jefe Reviews. But he's taken a look at the SoundPeats T2 ANC versus the Earfun Free Pro and trying to figure out what is the king of active noise cancellation for $60. So not only under $100, well under $100. Now, I haven't tried the SoundPeats, but I have taken the Earfun for a spin, and $60 for true wireless, low latency, active noise cancellation earbuds is kind of incredible. So if you're not like off at the super premium tier of the audiophile conversation, you need to watch Jeff's video comparing the SoundPeats versus the Earfun. And also, he's just a super cool dude. He's like absolutely one of my favorite content creators because he talks about feeding your ears better content. So he and I, we see eye to eye. We get along. And just under that, we've got Across the Podcast with Sam and Matt. So yes, the guest extravaganza from Sam and Matt was a great podcast to kind of tune in and stream. So you should absolutely watch that too. But I always got to throw the shade because Matt seems to take it the most personally whenever I'm at the top of the subreddit that I made, that I talk about a lot and put on podcasts and share on Twitter. So So again, I feel like his ire is maybe just a little misplaced. All right, folks, reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles. I'm going to have a few videos coming out this week, a headphone adapter, a laptop, a kind of a laptop review, but also sort of a laptop editorial. And then also I'm going to start like a monthly challenge on my YouTube channel, just things you can do with your phone. And the first monthly challenge is going to be something very simple. I want you to try writing on your phone using Word or some Google Docs or something like that. So I'm upfront. Those are the videos that are going to be coming out this week. You're warned. I'd like to see, can we improve this participation? Can we knock me down to a lower tier, not because you're downvoting my content, but because you're getting other people to come to Glowing Rectangles and upvote a broader collection of stories. You know, actually getting people to participate and see the amazing diversity that we're catching on this subreddit. Channels from 44 subscribers to over 1 million in active comparison. You don't see that on YouTube. I am so stoked and I am so proud of this little community because when I go to my YouTube recommendations, I see a bunch of channels with like 1 million subscribers. And when I subscribe to a channel that has under 100,000, it tries to push me to bigger content creators. If you come over here to Glowing Rectangles, you're going to see topics and conversation in immediate competition. 30,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers. The number 3 video came from someone with 44 subscribers. You're not going to see that on YouTube. And I flippin' love it. So reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles, and let's have a really fun chat about what the reality of tech conversation should look like. All right. And McCorcoran 3, this is exactly the sentiment that we need. This is why I started the subreddit in the first place. He says, I will subscribe to almost anyone who's working hard at this and has less than 1,000 subscribers. I mean, like, it costs me nothing to push subscribe and smash that bell icon for someone who's genuinely trying to put out some good work. I feel good about that. It's not to say like I don't watch channels with more subscribers or like you should unsubscribe from someone because they have 10 million subs. But the reality of this conversation and what we as hobbyists of tech should care about is seeing these different points of view and seeing how these competing ideas actually play out in these conversations. That's what gets me excited. And especially watching someone hustle. I mean, Alt Dad, 44 subscribers. I think he's put out a video every day since I started seeing him show up last week on the subreddit. and most of them are decently polished and well-produced videos. All Greg sharing some of my my emojis. That is a quite substantial number of Juan's head. All right, let me get this out of the way here. We talked about this a bit on the best of our week, and I just wanted to highlight it again because I think it's an obnoxiously clever idea. It's a clever idea that is maybe obnoxiously delivered. It is obnoxiously produced. But if Xiaomi is going to be taking camera tech this extremely seriously, I'm hoping that it's a trend towards device manufacturing that I think a lot of us would appreciate. I'm dancing all around this. So we talked about this on Best of Our Week. Xiaomi's Mi 11 Ultra breaks cover with a 120 times zoom camera and a tiny secondary screen. So I'm sharing my screen right here. This was originally posted on a YouTube channel that has since gone private called Tech. Oh, not the channel's gone private, but this video has gone private called Tech Buff. And Tech Buff apparently got his hands on a white and kind of a mirror finish black Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra. This is going to be Xiaomi's sort of crown jewel, everything in the kitchen sink, hardcore photography, media content and creation smartphone. And there is an enormous camera bulge on the back of this phone. Like the back of a Galaxy, like a Galaxy Ultra, kind of looks like there's a domino back there. It's almost across the entire width of the phone, and it's just as tall as the domino, or maybe it's a little bit shorter, but it's almost as tall as the domino that you'd find on the back of a Galaxy. That is a substantial chunk of smartphone real estate to have lifted and to have that poke out from the back of your phone. I mean, looking at the pictures here and looking at how thick this camera module is, it looks like it's thicker than a Surface Duo. Like you have an additional lump thicker than a Surface Duo sticking out the back of the phone. So that to me is a little bit obnoxious. This is already a really large device. I don't know what are the other stats here. They don't list the dimensions here, but I'm assuming that this is. Oh wait, here it is. 6.8 inch display and a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. I kind of feel at some point this huge lump sticking out the back of the phone, that the phone would actually just be better handled if this were filled in. So instead of this huge lump, you just extend the casing around the camera module and you just make the phone a little bit thicker. I kind of feel like that would be better. Or even you could make it kind of taper. So instead of the phone just rocking on the very edge of this huge camera lump, you kind of tilt it and you kind of have the back taper to the bottom edge. And I think you'd actually have a better surface to rest the phone down on. Like the phone would automatically angle in a better way, and all of the pressure of that angle isn't on the very fine edge of the camera module. Like if you remember, oh, I should have grabbed it as a prop. I don't know if I can find it quickly. Yeah, I don't think I can just grab it. It's over there. But my Lumia 1020 had that really big Oreo disc of a camera module, but the edges kind of around it tapered and flowed into that big camera lump. It wasn't just an abrupt cut. So when you would set it down, it would rock on the kind of the bottom edge of that Oreo disc, but then it would line up with the taper at the very bottom chin of the phone, and it would kind of help it sort of sit just a bit more stable. It's anytime you've got something that disrupts the back cover, your phone's going to wobble or rock or something. It's up to you to put a case on it so that it doesn't do that. But because we're going to put a case on it, you're already going to make the phone significantly thicker, right? So why pretend that we're concerned about the hand feel, making this device a little bit skinnier, when that doesn't actually improve operating and holding the phone? And McCorcoran, it could almost act like a little kickstand. Actually, what was HTC? They used to build kickstands directly into the back covers of their phones. Let's just do that. Come on. Sorry. Simon says Hypno, but that would mean a bigger battery and headphone jack would fit in easily. We don't want that. Just imagine, you'd have more room for antennas. You'd have more room for battery capacity. You'd have more room for all of these wireless charge coils. You could probably implement a smarter rear fingerprint sensor immediately under the camera module. More space and a headphone jack? Oh man, that would be terrible. Terrible. I mean, it would be a millimeter thicker. Who could hold that? You could, I mean, it wouldn't feel good in the hands as much. Perish the thought. Woe is me. I almost passed out and vomited at the same time just thinking about having more features on my phone. We need to get rid of those established features that people really use, because those gimmicks, thank you very much, are not for our phones anymore. Yeah, I mean, people are kind of guessing at what the price of this is, especially with the tech on tap, the camera modules. It's a Quad HD, 120 hertz display, IP68, Snapdragon 888. I'm assuming this is going to be a $1,200 phone, accounting for sort of regional pricing differences. I think importing one is probably going to be around $1,200. But the thing I do want to point out, the thing I like. Actually, let me see if I can make this photo just a bit bigger. Oh, it didn't really work. Excuse me. I am a big advocate for using the rear cameras to take your nicer self-portraits. That if you care about kind of capturing a memory, use the better camera on your phone. Don't use the often less good selfie camera that's built onto the front of your phone for taking video calls. Turn your phone around and shoot from the rear camera. And often these main camera sensors are wide enough that it's not hard getting a decent snap framed properly. But the thing that makes me excited is Xiaomi has kind of taken some of is kind of taking an idea of this that I really liked from phones like the Nubia. The Nubia had no selfie camera on the front of the phone. It was all screen. It had a small, fully Android available second display on the back of the phone under the camera. So when you wanted to take a selfie, you just turned your phone over in your in your hand, and then you used the better rear camera to take your selfie. So we're kind of doing the same thing here. Only the tiny little screen fits in the domino camera bulge on the back. So this is not going to be a practical or useful display to really use phone features. And what we see from this pre-release hardware is the little ticker display on the back is showing the full phone UI, and it's like smaller than my thumb. It's like if I turn my thumb sideways, like the thumbnail on my thumb with my little hobbit hands appears to be kind of roughly, maybe a little smaller than my. I mean, the ticker display is a little bit bigger than my thumbnail, but I mean, we're pretty close. Like, as a biological sort of analogous size comparison, that's where we're at. So you wouldn't use your full phone on this teeny tiny little screen, but if you just wanted to kind of frame up where your head was in the shot and you wanted to use the gooder cameras to do it, this is exactly the kind of solution I would love to support. I mean, ideally, we could also just do this with a mirror. I've used phones that used to have like a little mirror by the camera so you could take a self-portrait. That would work too. But this is the techier version of that, and I think it would work really well. So I'm hoping that at the premium tier, and while we're losing good features like SD card expansion, at least we're going to get something like this out of it where, you know, like my daughter, we were just at the zoo. One of the family photos we took was from me turning my phone around and clicking a rear camera selfie, and it looks really good. It looks a lot better than the selfie photo that my wife took from her iPhone. It's a much better camera on the back of my phone than on the front of someone else's phone. So that is a trend I really hope to see continue. I would just rather it come in packaging that's not quite so absurdly bulbous on the back of our phones. I just really have never liked big, huge, chunky camera modules. How we complained about it on the Lumia 1020, which offered a substantial difference in camera performance over competing smartphones. And now, like, we're coming back to this idea. Like, we just need space. We literally have run out of space to increase camera sensor sizes. The only way we're going to get better at this is if we put more space on it. But I just want the space to kind of fit the whole phone, not just this one little lump that makes the phone incomplete and wobbly on a desk. Oh, Simon, I didn't. Simon's asking if I ever tried the Asus Zenfone 7. So I reached out to Asus. I was really looking at what markets to import it from for a while. I was looking at the sales channels. I really wanted to play with one, and I did not get around to it. But the flip-up camera, it's a similar idea. I kind of like the idea of a second display because there are no moving parts. It's easier to contain and waterproof or add better water resistance to a device. But the thing is, I've also kind of started using a lot of folding phones and dual displays, and I've become a little less concerned about the idea of like this one IP rating needs to be at the expense of someone else's gadget preference. So the flip out camera makes a lot of sense. So instead of having a second screen, you build a hinge that flips the cameras forward so that you can use the main phone screen to compose your selfies. I think that's a totally appropriate solution to this issue too. So we're trading costs in different ways. And I really wanted to see what Asus's take on that would resemble. From Heikki, I still have my Nokia 808, and it has a huge camera hump. Still doesn't bother me at all. Well, and also, if you walk around with a camera and a lens sticking out the front of that camera, you're kind of used to having some kind of lump on your consumer electronics. Yeah, I'm really anxious. I'm still trying to reach out. I had a pretty good relationship with Xiaomi North America when I was at Newegg, but that was mostly focused on their laptop and then their other sort of consumer and home electronics Like Trisha and I did a video at Newegg on their electric scooter. Really well put together scooter. Like it was a great option, and it wasn't prohibitively expensive at the time that we were all like starting to get into electric scooters. I really liked it. They've never been very communicative on their phone business. And I think the last Xiaomi I got to play with through a phone retailer was the Mi 9. So I am a whole generation out of date with Xiaomi hardware, and I'd like to fix that this year. The Mi 11 beat Samsung to the punch. Xiaomi is taking this market very seriously. Their competition is pretty brutal. And even though I'm based in North America and I'm not going to be making a review on this to like convince North Americans that they should import devices, I still want to see what like competing ideas for this kind of tech might resemble. So looking at my limited gadget flipping budget, I'm seriously looking at picking up a Mi 11 Ultra after seeing this. Adichie Anil, you're still with Newegg, right? And then hashtag some Xiaomi shill. Yeah, I'm still doing work with Newegg. We're working internally again. It's like every other year, I kind of have to have this conversation about Newegg where there's another pivot. We're looking at the kind of content that we're going to be producing. I'm working with a new producer who's in charge of the Newegg Studios team. And I don't know how much more I can say than that. But there will be a live stream coming up. We did a live stream to cap off CES. So Trisha and Mike and I were all in a stream together, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, it was like the most I've gotten to talk to Trisha about techie stuff in a while. And then next month, I'm going to be doing another stream for a product that I can't talk about yet. So there is going to be some more Newegg stuff. I'm just not entirely sure. We haven't really hammered out the direction that we're going to be taking the studio moving into 2021. And with a new producer, we probably won't have a course for that until, I don't know, second quarter. It's hard. You know, we have a team that we kind of need to manage, and it's going to be interesting to see where we land. Oh, Greg, with your Snapdragon 845. All right. Yeah, we got through it. And that was the main gadgety news that I wanted to talk about. So, one, we can kind of have just kind of a loose conversation to wrap up the last 10, 15 minutes of the show here. I want to come back to something that I kind of teased and I was mentioning before. Oh, I got it over here on my desk. So, my favorite videos and reviews and conversations to produce are the ones that take more time. I was brought on to the Pocket Now team mostly on the strength of how I was reviewing cameras on phones. The folks at Pocket Now really wanted my camera deep dives under their channel. What we quickly discovered was a 10 to 20 minute video on a smartphone camera only worked, and by worked I mean was only profitable, if it was already a popular device and I was only going to say nice things about it. This isn't a knock against the Pocket Now community or the Pocket Now audience, but just in general, the trend suggested that if I put a lot of effort into an iPhone camera review, that camera review would get a lot of views because it's Apple. And a lot of those views came from people who weren't subscribed to Pocket Now. But we could also see a trend in the comments where some of my criticisms of Apple photography would be disregarded because the person who owned the iPhone really liked their camera, and it was obviously the best. And so then we kind of had to wonder, like, if I put out a video and I show, like, the iPhone camera does well over here, but is having some issues over there, just the idea that I am mentioning some problems with this camera seems to be turning people off from subscribing to Pocket now. Rinse and repeat for Samsung. Rinse and repeat for any other manufacturer. That by the time I could produce a deeper dive camera video, people weren't watching videos on those phones to see if they wanted to buy those phones. People were watching videos on those phones because they had already bought those phones and they wanted to hear someone say, you made the right choice. They wanted their bias confirmed. So one of the reasons why I left Pocket now was having some very tough conversations and totally fair conversations about the style of editorial, what they were trying to accomplish, and how to better monetize the amount of work that goes into every video. And so one of the ideas was, well, what if we only did camera deep dives on Samsung and Apple, and then maybe we just did loose write-ups. You know, like maybe we just did like a quick, you know, camera comparison for a Samsung phone versus an LG, and then that can exist as a text piece on pocketnow.com, but you didn't have to go through all of the work and the effort of producing a full video that far fewer people are going to watch. And the people who do watch will complain because they don't own LG and they wanted you to say LG phones aren't as good as the phone you own, which is kind of the DxO business model. So that wasn't the final reason why I left Pocket Now, but it contributed to a back and forth where, I mean, it was just kind of clear I was not a good fit for the Pocket Now audience. I really wasn't the kind of voice, the kind of editorial, or even just the video quality that they wanted to see in their subscription feed being subscribed to Pocket Now. So it kind of made sense for me to sort of walk away from that. But that's also been something that's floated with me since leaving Pocket Now, is the difficulty I've had in having the conversations I want to have on a reasonable timetable where it takes time to really use these things, and then following up. Outside of the camera reviews, my absolute favorite videos to work on and to co-produce, because I didn't really make all of them, but I at least got to work with Jaime on doing the After the Buzz series. And After the Buzz used to be a series that, like, you know, it could be 8 months, it could be a year. You know, after the buzz of this new product has worn off, we're going to come back and take a second look at it. And those videos were phenomenal. I loved coming back to those. Every time you'd come back to an older phone, like, you'd learn more about it. You'd get a second taste of it. Bugs had been fixed and updates had been extended, and the conversation changes. And that to me was more reflective of what it's like to own that product. A really good After the Buzz video should be a better review than the review you could make when you had the phone for a week under embargo before it launched to consumers. So I like doing that. I've been trying to push more of that to text pieces on somegadgetguy.com. Wrapping up last year, I kind of took a look back at the Android 11 updates for the OnePlus 8s. I took a look at some of the performance metrics and how I'm benchmarking phones. I like making a review, and I like a commentary that doesn't stop the week the product is available for consumers to buy, which is why I have a huge problem with the way that YouTube and Samsung weight the popularity of a Samsung release. Galaxy S21 comes out. Your SEO dies as soon as consumers can really buy the phone. Your ad, your views, everything immediately starts falling off when the unwashed masses can actually buy it. So Samsung gets their hooks into people who pre-order. The hype machine is in full effect on the biggest YouTube channels. And then after that hype has kind of calmed down, the phones go on sale. It was 2 weeks. 2 weeks until the Galaxy S21 Ultra hit a price drop. 2 weeks, and all of those people who bought the phone at launch were immediately upside down on their phone lease. From being the most loyal Samsung customers, immediately their phones were worth less than what they bought them at. I mean, again, I did a trade-in. Cool. You gave up a perfectly functional phone to get money off. You could have had 2 phones and spent less. Again, it's never just one-to-one. I got a great deal. It's like you had to give something to get that great deal. So I'm having this conversation, and I'm going to be writing up a Patreon post about this too, because I'd like to be doing a better job of revisiting these devices. Like, I want to do a follow-up on the V60. I want to do a follow-up on the Velvet. I want to do a follow-up on the Xperia 1 Mark II whenever it gets the Android 11 update that's already out. I'm focusing first. I'm going to shoot something on the Duo, because I feel like the Duo deserves like the most improved award of 2021 so far. The experience that you get in handling the Duo today is incredibly different than where it was at launch. And as tech reviewers, that's supposed to be what we care about. Not just, this device came out and on day one it was buggy. All devices are. But this is the most ambitious hardware experiment I've ever seen from a company that does tablets really well and has done a very good job of living up to the marketing expectations of improving the performance and improving the experience for consumers. So the problem I'm having is I'd like those to be more casual and conversational. I'm not shooting an aggressive, punchy, edited, tons of B-roll style video. That is a more conversational chat. It's probably a longer form chat because I've got to kind of explain, like, this is what it was like when I first used the phone. These updates came out. This happened, and now this is what it looks like today. So for me, what makes the most sense is kind of like a video diary. And it could be long form, like 15 to 20 minutes, like another sort of side podcasty kind of conversation. Those videos would be the death of my channel on YouTube. I'm actively sitting here conflicted because if I really start waiting those kinds of longer term conversations on less popular products and longer form videos that people probably won't watch to completion, every single aspect of that counts against the viability of my channel for advertising and ad revenue on YouTube. So what I can try to do is maybe like reach out for sponsorships. It is so much work and so much time to try and find a sponsor. At least one that kind of like at least balances the amount of work and effort with how you would get paid. Again, on Best of Our Week, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but we didn't go too deep. The week before, I had spent 4 or 5 days in regular communication with a company that wanted to send me product and wanted to do highlight and feature videos. And then also we're talking about like ad bumpers on some of my other editorials. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 exchanges like, we're thinking about sponsoring. Okay, cool. What did you have in mind? I mean, like, it took so much communication to like, well, are you talking about a sponsored review? Because I don't do those. What about highlights? We could do features. I could like take this out, do this with it, and we can make this like a sponsored video that really highlights the product. I mean, like, I'm cool to do this, but we get to the end of 4 days of back and forth with these people, and it's like that's time that's taken out of writing another script, editing another video, working on another podcast, or just spending time with my daughter. That is time. That is time that I do not have a lot of. And then we get back to him. It's like, well, we were thinking about sending you this product on like $200. And like, you wanted to send me a product that's not that expensive. Like, I could buy it and pay me $200 to do a standalone video and build ads into other videos that would then reduce the monetization of my ads on YouTube? That's what you thought this was going to be. So again, if you had just led with that, I would have thanked you for your interest and then told you I was not interested and that we could have ended this conversation 4 days ago. And you can't really approach a potential sponsorship conversation with like money up front. Just tell me your dollar amount. It's like you've got to like engage in the conversation to eventually get to a point where you can really start talking numbers, and it's just maddening. So I could look at sponsors for some of these longer term gadget reviews, but I feel like one of the first things I'm going to talk about to the Patreon audience is making the longer term topic videos just Patreon exclusives to start, because I really do not see an outcome that makes any more sense. You know, if I put these up on YouTube, it's probably going to hurt my channel metrics. If I reach out for sponsors, it's going to take way more time to try and do the sponsorship chat. And then also there's less pressure to try and make these the most entertainingest videos, because the people who most want to watch them are probably looking at my Patreon. So that's kind of the conflict that I'm in. This is a long and rambling way to kind of complete this podcast, and especially the podcast being one of the public areas where I talk about, you know, channel stuff. But you know, this is also like, you know, I want to be a part of a conversation, and I want to lead a conversation, and I want people to join a conversation. And it's great when that happens on YouTube, but when YouTube stands in between me and my subscribers, then I don't feel I can expend the energy to host that kind of a conversation there. So I'll be asking for feedback, and if anybody has any ideas here, I mean, it's great. You know, I reached out to Floatplane. They turned me down, so there's not an opportunity to do business with Floatplane. These aren't the kinds of videos that I think would do well on Nebula, so it's not like I'm trying to cut out other opportunities. It's just where is this video content most appropriate? And it seems most appropriate in my brain to host those kinds of conversations with exactly the audience that is looking for that kind of longer term and deeper dive chat. And so much the same way that I do the audio deep dives, they've become a lot more casual. It's more of me kind of rambling through my experiences listening to the audio, less about me like cutting up the most punchily, aggressively edited 4-minute summation, and more just like, hey, we're going to kick back, let's chat. I listened to some music. Do you like listening to music? This is what it was like. That's kind of the vibe and kind of the flow that I want to do for these longer term revisits. And that also gives me the ability to like go back even further. Like when I pulled out that Huawei Nova, an almost 5-year-old phone on a mid-ranger processor, and it was still getting work done. I was like, man, I really need to do this more. A 3-year-old phone, a 4-year-old phone, like the actual compute power isn't the problem. And I can't do that with any kind of regularity on my main public YouTube channel. So it's a bummer. So Adichie Anil, so many Patreon exclusives, man. Like, you're putting in the effort, but I'd love to have more people see your work. But I understand that YouTube isn't that straightforward. Oh, sending you hugs. So yeah, I mean, like if I felt like YouTube was going to use other people subscribing as the evidence that they wanted to see my videos, then I don't think these videos would be a problem. But people click subscribe, and then YouTube still alters the order of content that comes in from all the creators they're subscribed to. So it would be great if more people were really kind of organically coming to my content because they clicked on the subscribe button. But that's not really the reality of how YouTube operates, at least from what limited insight we can glean from the YouTube algorithm. That doesn't seem to be how any of this works. So it doesn't feel to me like I'm really missing out on a better quality conversation, because I already have another platform called Patreon where people can engage and can dig into that more direct conversation. And there isn't anything sort of standing in between me and them. It's direct. So like I said, I'm gonna reach out, and I'm sure like actually the people on Patreon will probably encourage me to try and make more of this public. But I really don't have the time or the stomach to do like, well, let me do a Patreon version of this video and then I'll cut it down and I'll just do like a teaser for YouTube. And you're like, it's so much work. It's so much work. And it seems to piss off people when they don't get everything they want for free. And I don't know. I mean, again, it's like I can talk about it and I can point people to it. Maybe I'll put it in the community tab, but it's heady stuff, because I feel like we gadget reviewers have kind of dropped the ball on really kind of digging in, like really examining the claims of these manufacturers and trying to reach out to the people that we claim we're reviewing these things for. Like anyone who picks up a Surface Duo and is like, but average consumers, and like you've immediately lost any credibility. You've completely lost the plot. This is not a product to be discussed that way, and it's not aiming to be a product discussed that way. So what are we doing? So anyway, long term on the Surface Duo, really good. The outlook on this has been phenomenal. Get it? Outlook? Microsoft? Haha, pun totally intended. But just like the updates to this UI, to the launcher, to the keyboard, and then the big January update has just been absolutely gorgeous. This device has gone from being sort of an interesting hardware experiment in a shockingly thin frame. It's just a little bit thicker than half the depth of an iPhone SE, and it's a full tablet that then bends and folds up to something that can fit in your pocket. All of that I was on board for. The software has now been better realized to support how radical this hardware experiment is. So it's been good times. Let me get some more water. We'll wrap up a few of these questions. And TK Bay! What? TK, what are you doing? TK gifting subs to King Turtle, Alzambino, Peacock Obscura, Suku, and Treats Milk? What are you doing? TK, thank you so much. You're my co-host on a podcast. What? Wow, man. Thank you. You just jumped to the number 2 position in gifting out some subs. Well, thank you very much. The support, as always, has been greatly appreciated. Dave Burns, the bottom is going to fall out of this tech sphere and the people in the tech starter packs are going to get blindsided. We talked about that quite a bit with Daniel Bader. So I would definitely recommend listening to that. And Gabaletta, I completely agree. A lot of this is self-inflicted. But again, it's by necessity. These are conversations that have been playing out for years. I'm 3 years removed from producing at Pocket now, and we're still feeling the ramifications of those conversations we were having 3 years ago. So it's not just like, oh, this is suddenly happening now. It's just it's becoming a bit more obvious, and that's kind of gross. Rue Sunshine, what is Floatplane? It's another streaming platform. It was built by Linus Tech Tips. When they started kind of opening up what creators could, again, it's another way that you can kind of create a subscription or some kind of sort of more private community around a particular topic or around a particular audience. And so when that started opening up, I had already, shown like I was starting to make some decent money on Patreon. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, I'd love to work with you guys. And like I could keep topics really focused or could be helping how to. And they were like, well, thank you. We've looked at your stuff and we just don't think you'll be a good fit for Floatplane right now. And they're like, that's the end of the conversation. So I was like, all right, fine. I'm not going to try and convince you that you need to have me on your smaller private platform, which is mostly just for Linus Tech Tips videos. Paul Purry, Microsoft dad jokes. Yep. McCorcoran 3, do you think the OnePlus Watch will use the 4100? So again, we want to talk about longer term coverage, right? The TicWatch Pro 3 got kind of a feature update. It's not the full, MR2 update from Google, but it was just like a little polish update from Mobvoi. This watch is so smooth. So again, I'm not saying like, hey, give Android Wear a second chance. Pass on Fossil. Oh man, pass on Fossil. Get away from the 2100 and the 3100 chipsets. Battery life has improved. I now routinely get about 3 days of runtime, especially thanks to this low power display trick. The act of scrolling through notifications and actually like firing up the little applets on the watch is actually usable now. In a way where I could kind of struggle through on my TicWatch LTE, the TicWatch Pro LTE. Like I would use it, but it wasn't a very pleasant experience, and I couldn't as strongly recommend it for other people. This is the way that modern Wear OS, I shouldn't say Android Wear. This is the way that modern Wear OS should work, and it's just because of this hardware advantage. So if OnePlus comes out with a watch and it's a MediaTek or it's a Snapdragon 3100, I'm having a hard time pointing to that and saying go for it. It's just so much better with a beefier processor. That extra processing power is bringing like scrolling through notifications up to the fluidity of my Apple Watch. It's that close. Apple Watch is still more functional for all of those little applets. I can't say that it's just, immediately nicer and smoother to use. Like TicWatch is caught up substantially with this chipset. Simon says, Hypno, how about approaching the BBC as their American tech correspondent? Wow. Well, I've done a lot of work with local news channels, often as the pundit who gets interviewed, not as the person like really producing segments. I would probably have to give my entire up my entire Some Gadget Guy thing. I'd probably still be able to produce with Newegg. Actually, no. I mean, if I were like a legit like BBC reporter, I don't think I'd probably end up under some kind of loose exclusivity. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I don't think it would work out in my favor. And I think I would be caught up in just a more traditional news broadcast style commentary, which wouldn't be bad. What's funny is I don't think it would actually pay as well. Like, again, it's like I got to crunch the numbers on affiliate marketing, YouTube ad revenue, Patreon, and then my side gigs with reviews.org and with Newegg. And I don't think being a BBC correspondent would pay as well. And I'd probably have to travel a lot more. Whoa! That was just huge. Paul Puri hooking up tier 1 subs for No Free Will Stream, F Mooney, Merrill Link, JD Smith, Ben Hop, Tone 50, Alt Tech Dad, Ron and Otter, Java Lover, Snoogle, SD Sakuragi, Freudotev, Kenox 80, Ingugui Trust, and Lori Elf or Lori Elf. Paul, whoa, man, whoa. That was huge. Dang. I feel like that's the right note to go out on as we crest into 2 hours and 14 minutes of podcasting. Man, thank you. That was great. And Kepper also subscribed with Prime. Kepper 67. Again, I know the end of this got a little maudlin, but the thing I don't want to have happen is me getting to a breaking point and then just pulling the plug, or like, hey, I just took this job at a PR company and bye, I'm out. And I feel like some of these conversations need to be happening publicly. They help prevent creator burnout. They kind of help express like, what is it what's the goal of this channel? And for anyone who's working in some type of self-produced media, content creation, YouTube, anything like that, obviously a part of this is like, hey, we want to build an audience and we want to monetize and we want to be able to make money off of our effort. But beyond that, if I'm not very clear about what the goal of my channel is, the goal of my channel is to be a consumer advocate, is to talk about things that I think will help the consumer experience, to try and expose marketing that stands in the way of consumers getting to what it is that they should really want, then I don't think I'm doing my job. And if I don't reinforce that, then someone comes to my channel, they're going to be very surprised or a little off-put by the kind of commentary that I produce. So for those of you who have been following and participating and supporting, it means the world to me. And it's also why I've got to be very clear, like, hey, man, these are some of the challenges I'm going through, so that it just doesn't come as a shock one day. If you're like, I had a bad day, I'm out, peace. Like, I don't want it to ever come to that. So thank you so much, all of you. For those of you that are gifting a ton of subs, for those of you that are just, subbing on your own, and for those of you that are sharing the work done in communities like Glowing Rectangles, who are sharing YouTube videos and trying to bolster conversations on other podcasts, and are taking to making your own content too. That in joining this conversation, it's not just supporting other people, but that you have something to say and you have something to contribute. To be any part of that, if I've inspired any of that, it means the world to me. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. DTNL. Enough wholesomeness. Back to calling Juan a shill. Well, let me tell you about the Microsoft Surface Duo and why everyone should buy one. Hashtag some transparent with his audience guy. Yeah, it's all right. From Paul Puri, you could always get a job at a manufacturer and pivot into a gaming channel. Man, my wife and I have had some conversations about that too, and how I would really probably not be good at that. McCorcoran 3. No, I'm serious. And like, I don't want to turn that into a joke, because I feel a lot of us are grappling with some of this stuff. If you're having an existential crisis, also leave a comment. I'm going to be ending the stream now, but future podcasts and future conversations, future videos, future social media posts. I'll be honest, you know what? I don't want to out people that have had private conversations with me regarding this, but I think it's not difficult to go through the subscriptions on channels of creators near my size, like from 50,000 subscribers to 300,000 subscribers in that window, and how many of us are really wrestling and really struggling with what it is our channels are supposed to be and what it is that we want to contribute to these channels. I think it's pretty clear. I think it's very clear, like, what's going on in a number of these conversations. So it's not on me to point out, well, I was in a conversation with Joe some tech dude.org, and he was telling me about this terrible PR experience that he had. It's not my story to tell. But I can assure you, we're having those conversations behind the scenes because it is getting tough. And I just don't want that to come as a shock one day. Someone just evaporates and they're like, they just have a complete meltdown. I don't want that to happen. So folks, be on the lookout. Plenty of really great content coming out. Some stuff that I'm really excited to talk about and to share. Some audio kit, laptop kit, some follow-ups on devices. If you're on the Patreon, I'm going to be putting out just sort of a topic editorial, something to kick off a conversation where maybe we can plan a strategy around longer term coverage that is fair and is accessible. I'll need help. I'm putting it out there. I think we all know I need help. But I will need guidance on this. And, folks on the Patreon are already, you're already kind of shareholders in this endeavor. So contributing to that, I feel like you have a vote. I might override, but there can be some influence or some guidance there that might actually point me in a direction that's better for everybody. So patreon.com/somegadgetguy. In the meantime, I want you all to have an amazing week with your technology. I want you to do awesome with your tech. I want you to be awesome with your tech. And I really hope to see all of these names and faces back next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. Take care. The world is a crazy and strange place, and it's probably going to get a lot crazier before it calms down again. So don't get caught up in the crazy as much as try to have the grown-up conversations that will help us fix it. And I'll catch you back here next week. Take care. I love you all. Be well.